Sup, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and this is my part two of me reviewing and ranking Yes's live albums. I recently did the studio albums and was kind of surprised to discover they had so many in the last 20 years, essentially. I really only know three, the first three. And then I knew the Progeny box set that had the 7 shows from 72. The other stuff I had never heard before. I had never checked out. So I'm going to go through them from the beginning, review each one, and then compare them and rank them and do a whole bunch of stuff. I got a whole bunch of ideas for this Yes stuff. Interested to see which songs are released the most, which ones are the best, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to discuss the album. Then I'm going to order the songs from my favorite to least favorite to favorite based on not the song itself, but how well the live version improves upon or changes the studio enough where if I had a choice between the two, what would I rather hear? And for a lot of them, it is studio because I think the studio stuff is good. But which ones I think are better? Yes, live. You get it. So Yesshows is what I'm talking about today. Right there. This is their second live album. Came out in 1980. It is an album that comes from material from a double album, 4 sides. The music comes from 3 different tours, including a tour that has Patrick Moraz on keyboards, which is nice. And we get him doing Gates of Delirium. And then I believe he's also on the Ritual Part 1 and Ritual Part 2, which pretty good. The other ones are all like your typical Howe, Wakeman, White, Anderson, and Squire. Love the set list of this, or the track list. There are no repeats from Yes songs. Yes songs pretty much focused on the Fragile, Yes album, Close to the Edge, brilliant trifecta. And this is nothing from those albums. They're just focusing on the albums that came after that, plus a song from an earlier album. And so what you get is just generally opens up with Parallels, which is a good opener. It was the tour opener. Here it's the CD opener. Start off with a little Stravinsky Firebird suite, then we go into like all of Parallels. Pretty much sounds the same as the normal version, just a little bit more energy. I think Howe's guitar solo at the ends maybe just a little bit nastier than the studio version. The one thing that I think is true throughout the entire disc, whether we're in 76, there's some stuff from 76, stuff from 77, stuff from 78. Chris Squire is just bringing it always. Yeah, a lot of this live stuff just has a little more fire than other stuff, but Squire in particular is just bringing it almost the entire time. Or at least in the mix, he's really, really present in a good way. So Parallels opens, then we get Time and a Word, an earlier song from before the Yes album. And then we get Going for the One. That's all of side A. Side B in its entirety is the Gates of Delirium, the track off Relayer. This is one of the ones that has Moraz. Side 3 opens with Don't Kill the Whale. Then we get some little bit of chit chat. And then we get, I think we get some little bit of chit chat on this, right? At the end of Don't Kill the Whale. Or is there's another live album that has a little bit of chit chat at the end of Don't Kill the Whale. And then we get Ritual Part 1. Ritual, which comes from Tales from Topographic Oceans, is split into 2 parts. You essentially get roughly the first 12 minutes. And then on the studio version, right around the 12-minute mark is when we get like our first little quiet, kind of spacey, atmospheric moment before we go into what I guess is like the Chris Squire bass solo section of the song, the percussion jam. So Ritual Part 1 ends when we go into that soft section, and then Ritual Part 2 starts off right with that soft section. Then we go into like the drop, and then we get the sort of bass solo, and then we get a percussion jam. And then it closes out with Wondrous Stories. So I love the set list. I think there's maybe some deeper cuts that might have been fun to hear, but I think they did a good job of like representing this sort of late 70s stage. Time and a Word is a nice one to have thrown in there. The CD was re-released, and there were a couple bonus tracks from 78. I've Seen All Good People and Roundabout, but I'm not considering those. So I'm just going to talk about the tracks that were released, and I'm going to rank them from my least favorite to my favorite. And I'll talk about them one by one, and then I'll put the list up on the screen when I'm done if you want to see what it looks like. But Going from least favorite to favorite, I think Time in a Word is probably my least favorite on here. I actually like the studio version better. I think the production on it, I think the contrast between like when the drums come in, I think the elements that are using to sort of enhance the song, I think work better than just this live version. I like hearing it. I'm glad it's included in their set list. I think it's a good choice. But as far as the actual performance of the song goes, I think this is the one on here that I think the studio version I would prefer to listen to. Number 7 is Wondrous Stories. Not a song I really like, but I think the mix on this is a little better. I think John Anderson's voice is a little more prominent live. There's a little bit of kind of weirdness that kind of seeps in a more dynamic way live than it does on that studio version, which I don't like the song live or studio, but the live one, it's more listenable to me. I can tolerate it a little more, but I just don't think it's a very good song, or at least it doesn't connect with me in my soul. Number 6 is Going for the One. In the actual performance of Time in a Word, it's part of this long medley of songs, and it goes immediately into Long Distance Runaround. So you get Time in a Word, and then Wakeman comes in with this like do 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 do, and we go into Long Distance Runaround. For this live performance, they've cut from Time in a Word, and they kind of keep that same segue, but they jump into Going for the One. And if you didn't know that they were from 2 different tours, I think they're from 2 different tours. No, must be from the same tour, right? No, one's from November 77, the other one's from October 78. You might think that it was a live, real-time segue. They do a good job of editing that segue. But the actual segue is from Time in a Word into Long Distance Runaround, which obviously wasn't included on here because it was on one of the highlights of Yes songs. The Going for the One, just a little bit more energy. They're just attacking a little bit harder. I think probably Squire is the one that maybe benefits the most, comes forward the most. Number 5 is Don't Kill the Whale. I love Don't Kill the Whale. I think it's a great song. I think it's a fantastic song. This is pretty much just a really good high energy live version. Pretty straightforward, pretty much the same thing. Number 4 is Ritual Part 1. In the beginning of Ritual Part 1, I actually think I prefer the studio version for maybe the first several minutes. I think this version almost has a little bit too much energy early, and they're like a little bit, it's got that live sort of momentum that naturally carries a song live a lot of the time. And I don't think it works all that well in the beginning, because the beginning of Ritual Part 1, I think, does a really good job of setting up that sort of like the climactic 20-minute ending to the album. But I think it gives it a little more stately, a little more pomp, not pomp and circumstance, but it gives this just, there's something a little more regal about it. And I think the live version kind of rushes that a little bit. And I'm like, you guys, there's a little too much here, like reel it back a little. But once we get back that initial part and we start getting into the actual lyrics and we head towards part 2, I'm enjoying it more, and that live energy carries through well. Mraz's keyboard sounds carry through well. All the choices that are made are done well. But Ritual Part 1 sticks pretty closely to the studio version. That would be a number 4. Number 3 is Parallels. It's just a great opener. Placing it as an opener, I think I like the song better than, deep in the middle of an album. I like the Firebird, that little tease of the Firebird Suite leading into the song. So everything about Parallels, I just like. It just works. The guitar solo at the end just feels nastier. So I dig that. Number 2, Gates of Delirium. Got to give props to Anderson on this. Anderson is just so much more emotive and so much more just like, there's just like something behind his vocals. There's like energy and urgency to them that I think serve the song really well. And this is one of those where, like, when you're done listening to it and you realize that they just accomplished this crazy, like that middle proggy weirdness section before we like things break down and we eventually head into Soon. They execute it live, and you're just like, wow, they just did all that live. And yet somehow it sounds like the studio album, just with more energy, with more momentum. The grooves just kind of groove a little bit harder. And by the time we get to Soon is just like So beautiful. Such an absolutely amazing song. That's the house slide guitar part, just Anderson's vocals, everything about Soon. Just amazing. A great ending. But for the most part, other than sort of that dose of energy and that little that the live version has, Gates of Delirium stays pretty close to the studio. In fact, all of these so far stay pretty close to the studio versions. And then we get to Ritual Part 2. And Ritual Part 2 is kind of serving the purpose of sort of long distance run around into the fish served on like Yes songs. This is the moment where they're really going to let Squire like jam out. They're really going to let the drummer jam out. We're going to get a really long percussion jam. And so really the song itself, I think it's like 21 minutes on the studio, breaking up the two. We're close to 28, though it ends like a minute early. So we're close to 26 and a half-ish. That extra 5 minutes comes from Ritual Part 2. Just this awesome, like Chris Squire-centric portion. And then we drop into that crazy percussion jam, which is a lot more subdued, but sinister, and has this sort of darker, mysterious quality to it. And it's a section I could seep in for like 25 minutes. It is so good, and it really shows off this band's like ability to like loosen up and let their hair down and kind of jam a little and let people have improv moments and all that stuff. When we get to the end of the song, I think Howe's solo is a little bit longer than it is on the studio version. A little bit more fire to that solo, a little more bite. But I think the thing that really makes Ritual Part 2 like a special song is that early jam after we get like the spacey part, and then we do the drop, and then we're just kind of off doing crazy things for like 5 or 6 minutes. So yeah, that's what the songs look like in order. That's my least favorite to favorite as far as versions on here. But not, like some of these songs were in my top 10 of Yes songs, but they're not number one on here. This is really going by the live performance. If I had to rank the two, I'm not going to put the list up because there's only two. I like Yes songs better than I like Yesshows, but I do like Yesshows. I think it's a good listen. The sound quality is better on Yesshows, so it has that going for it. Eventually, I'm also going to rank all the songs. So when I'm done with this, I will have like the top 10, live songs, or at least singular live performances on this release. The only two that would make the top 10 and would knock stuff off out of Yes songs would be Ritual Part 2 and the Gates of Delirium, with Gates of Delirium kind of sneaking in towards the bottom. I think as much as I enjoy this album, I think this stuff, the differentiation between the live and the studio is really, it's only Ritual Part 2 that is really kind of dramatically drastic, and everything else is more just like an infusion of energy, an infusion of Squire, a little infusion of nastiness or aggression or urgency, but it stays pretty true to the studio stuff. But yeah, but that's all I got. I like this album. I think it's a good Yesshows album. Love the track listing. I love the fact that they've picked these longer songs and mixed it in with, it's a good mixture. The only one I kind of would maybe time in a word, because I just don't like the live version. Wondrous Stories don't do much for me. But everything else is really enjoyable and really fantastic. So yeah, that's what I got about Yesshows. Their 1980, their second live album. I recommend it. Let me know what you think about this album, whether you like it, hate it. Let me know what you think about these songs. Let me know if I'm missing something particularly live and special that I forgot to point out. You know how all this works, people. You know how all this works. But yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, listen to music, and go listen to Ritual. Listen to all of it. Part 2 is the best, but do Ritual Part 1 into Ritual Part 2 so you get the whole experience. But yeah, Ritual Part 2, it's pretty special, people. It's pretty special. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later. Peace. I got the hiccups.